The courtroom fell silent the moment he walked in, not with respect, but with shock. His arm was wrapped around another woman, younger, smiling like she already owned the life he destroyed. And just a few feet away sat his wife of 8 years, calm, unreadable, almost peaceful. Everyone thought she was broken, but what no one knew was that she had something that would end him forever. And when the judge lifted a manila envelope labeled DNA results, even the smug billionaire stopped smiling. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. 3 months earlier, Claire Matthews was living what everyone thought was the perfect life. Her husband, Richard Matthews, was the founder of a tech empire worth over $2 billion. They lived in a sprawling estate in Connecticut, attended charity galas, and were featured in business magazines as the power couple of the decade. But behind the marble countertops and designer furniture, Claire's marriage had been dying for years. She just didn't know it yet. Richard came home late most nights, his excuses always polished and professional. Board meetings, investor calls, product launches. Claire believed him because she wanted to. Because admitting the truth would mean admitting she'd wasted nearly a decade of her life on a man who had stopped seeing her as a partner and started seeing her as an accessory. But then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. Claire remembered because Tuesdays were the nights Richard usually stayed home. She had cooked his favorite meal, roasted chicken with rosemary, the same dish she made when they first started dating. She set the table with candles, poured wine, and waited. An hour passed, then 2. At 11 p.m., her phone buzzed. A single text. Working late. Don't wake up. She stared at those 4 words until they blurred. And for the first time in years, something inside her cracked. The next morning, Claire did something she'd never done before. She opened Richard's laptop. Her hands were shaking as she typed in his password, the same one he'd used for years, their wedding anniversary. The screen unlocked, and what she found made her stomach drop. Emails, hundreds of them, to a woman named Vanessa Cole, a 26-year-old marketing consultant who worked for one of Richard's subsidiary companies. The messages weren't just professional. They were intimate, detailed. Some of them made Claire feel sick. There were photos, too. Vanessa on a yacht. Vanessa in Paris. Vanessa wearing a necklace Claire recognized because Richard had told her it was a gift for a client. The affair had been going on for over 2 years. 2 years of lies. 2 years of her cooking dinners he never came home for. 2 years of her defending him to friends who whispered that he seemed distant. Claire didn't cry. She didn't scream. She sat there in the cold glow of the laptop screen and felt something harden inside her chest. A quiet, unshakable resolve. She wasn't going to fall apart. She was going to fight back. But first, she needed proof. Real proof. The kind that couldn't be explained away or buried by expensive lawyers. Claire hired a private investigator. Not just any investigator. Someone who specialized in high net worth divorces. His name was Marcus Trent, a former forensic accountant who'd helped uncover financial fraud in some of the biggest corporate scandals in the country. Marcus didn't ask her why she suspected her husband. He just asked her what she wanted. Everything, Claire said. I want to know everything. Over the next 6 weeks, Marcus followed Richard like a shadow. He tracked his movements, photographed his meetings, and documented every moment he spent with Vanessa. But Marcus didn't stop there. He dug into Richard's finances, bank accounts, offshore holdings, shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands, and what he found was staggering. Richard hadn't just been cheating on Claire. He'd been systematically hiding assets to keep them out of her reach in case of a divorce. Millions of dollars funneled into accounts under fake business names, properties purchased under Vanessa's name, even a trust fund set up for a child Claire didn't know existed. Marcus handed her a folder 3 in thick. This man thought he was untouchable. Marcus said quietly, "He's not." Claire opened the folder and saw the proof. Financial records, photographs, text messages, where Richard joked with his lawyer about how he'd make sure she gets nothing. And then at the very back of the folder was a paternity test. Richard had a 4-year-old son with Vanessa, a child conceived while he was still telling Claire they should wait before starting a family because his business wasn't stable enough yet. How would you feel if the person you trusted most in the world had been planning your destruction while smiling at you across the breakfast table? Claire didn't just feel betrayed. She felt erased. Like the 8 years of her life she'd given to Richard had been nothing more than a placeholder while he built his real future with someone else. But Claire wasn't the type to crumble. She was the daughter of a single mother who'd worked 3 jobs to put her through college. She'd learned early that survival meant being smarter than the people who underestimated you. And Richard had made one fatal mistake. He underestimated her. Claire filed for divorce on a Friday afternoon. She didn't tell Richard. She didn't warn him. She had the papers delivered to his office by a courier while he was in the middle of a board meeting. His assistant later told Claire that Richard went pale when he opened the envelope, that he locked himself in his office for an hour, that when he finally came out, he looked like a man who'd just been hit by a truck. But Richard recovered quickly. By Monday, he'd lawyered up. A team of 5 attorneys from one of the most ruthless firms in New York. They filed motions, demanded mediation, tried to paint Claire as an unstable, gold-digging spouse who'd contributed nothing to the marriage. They even had the audacity to claim she'd been unfaithful. It was a textbook strategy. Destroy her credibility before she could damage his. But Claire had something they didn't expect. She had Marcus, and she had the truth. The preliminary hearing was set for early December. The courtroom was smaller than Claire expected, colder, too, with pale yellow walls and fluorescent lights that made everyone look exhausted. Richard walked in wearing a $5,000 suit, flanked by his legal team. He didn't even glance at Claire. He sat at his table, scrolled through his phone, and whispered to his lead attorney, like this was just another Tuesday inconvenience. But then Claire's attorney, a sharp woman named Diane Cortez, stood up. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit evidence of financial misconduct and adultery." Diane placed a stack of documents on the judge's bench. Richard's lawyer shot to his feet. "Objection. This is a fishing expedition designed to smear my client's reputation." The judge, an older woman named Margaret Hale, adjusted her glasses and looked at Diane. "Counselor, I hope you have something substantive." Diane smiled. "I do, Your Honor. I have 12 offshore accounts for shell companies, 2 properties purchased under fraudulent names, and a paternity test proving Mr. Matthews fathered a child with his mistress while married to my client." The room went silent. Richard's face turned white. His lawyer froze mid-sentence. Judge Hale leaned forward. "I'd like to see that paternity test." Diane handed it over. The judge read it slowly, her expression unreadable. Then she looked directly at Richard. "Mr. Matthews, is this accurate?" Richard opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His lawyer jumped in. "Your Honor, we were unaware of this document. We'd like time to verify its authenticity." Judge Hale didn't blink. "You'll have that time, but until then, I'm freezing all marital assets. No transfers, no withdrawals. Nothing moves until we get to the bottom of this." Richard's lawyer looked like he'd been slapped. Richard himself looked worse, pale, sweating, his hands gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping him upright. After the hearing, Claire walked out of the courthouse into the cold December air. She didn't feel victorious. She felt hollow, like she'd won a battle but lost something she couldn't name. Marcus was waiting by her car. "You did good in there," he said. Claire nodded, but she couldn't bring herself to smile. "He looked scared," she said quietly. "Good," Marcus replied. "He should be." But as Claire drove home that night, she couldn't stop thinking about the look on Richard's face when the judge read the paternity results. Not anger, not defiance, fear. Real raw fear. And for the first time since she'd found those emails, Claire realized something. Richard had built his entire empire on control, on making people believe he was untouchable. And now, in front of a courtroom full of people, that illusion had shattered. But Claire knew this wasn't over. Men like Richard didn't go down quietly. They fought back. And they fought dirty. 2 weeks later, Claire woke up to find her face on the cover of a tabloid website. The headline read, "Billionaire's wife accused of extortion and fraud." The article claimed she'd fabricated evidence, bribed investigators, and was trying to steal Richard's fortune through lies and manipulation. It quoted anonymous sources close to Richard, who described her as unstable, vengeful, and desperate. Claire felt her chest tighten. This was exactly what Richard's lawyers had warned her about during the preliminary hearing. If they couldn't win on facts, they'd win by destroying her reputation. Her phone rang. It was Diane. "Don't read the comments," Diane said immediately. "They're paying people to flood social media with attacks on you. This is a standard intimidation tactic. It means they're scared." "It doesn't feel like they're scared," Claire said, her voice shaking. "It feels like they're winning." "They're not," Diane said firmly. "Trust me, we have the evidence. They have smoke and mirrors, and smoke doesn't hold up in court." But the attacks didn't stop. Over the next month, Claire's private life was dissected online. Old photos were dug up and taken out of context. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years gave interviews, claiming she'd always been manipulative. Even her college roommate, someone she'd trusted, sold a story about how Claire had always been obsessed with money. Claire stopped going outside. She stopped checking her phone. She felt like she was suffocating under the weight of 1,000 lies. She couldn't fight fast enough. But then something unexpected happened. Other women started coming forward. Women who'd worked for Richard's company. Women who'd been harassed, propositioned, or fired after rejecting him. One of them was a former executive assistant named Angela Ross. She reached out to Claire through Diane with a message. "I believe you and I want to help." Angela had kept emails, text messages, voice recordings of Richard making inappropriate advances, and then threatening her job when she said no. She'd been too afraid to come forward before, but seeing Claire fight back gave her courage, and she wasn't alone. Over the course of 3 weeks, 7 more women contacted Claire's legal team. Each one had a story. Each one had proof. Richard's carefully constructed image as a visionary CEO was crumbling, and this time no amount of money could stop it. The media that had tried to bury Claire now couldn't ignore the wave of accusations. News outlets that had run Richard's smear campaign were forced to cover the allegations. Business partners started distancing themselves. Investors pulled funding, and Richard's billion-dollar empire began to crack. The final hearing was scheduled for late January. This time the courtroom was packed. Journalists, activists, women who'd been hurt by men like Richard and wanted to see justice happen for once. Claire sat at her table, hands folded, her face calm. Richard walked in with Vanessa on his arm. It was a bold move, almost arrogant, like he was daring the court to judge him. But when he saw the room full of people, the cameras, the women sitting in the gallery watching him with cold, unflinching eyes, his confidence faltered. Judge Hale called the court to order. Diane presented the evidence. Financial records showing Richard had hidden over $30 million. Testimony from Angela and the other women, the paternity test, the emails, the photographs, everything. Richard's lawyer tried to object, tried to discredit, tried to stall, but there was too much. The evidence was overwhelming. And then, Judge Hale did something no one expected. She asked Richard to stand. "Mr. Matthews," she said, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade. "I've presided over a lot of divorce cases, but I have never seen such a calculated, deliberate attempt to defraud a spouse and manipulate the legal system. You didn't just betray your wife. You tried to erase her. You hid assets. You fathered a child in secret. You lied under oath. And when she fought back, you tried to destroy her reputation." Richard stood there silent, his jaw tight. Judge Hale continued, "I'm awarding Mrs. Matthews 60% of all marital assets, including the holdings you attempted to conceal. I'm also ordering you to pay her legal fees in full, as well as damages for emotional distress. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges related to perjury and financial fraud." The courtroom erupted. Richard's face went slack. Vanessa, sitting behind him, looked like she wanted to disappear. Claire didn't move. She just sat there, hands still folded, feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Relief. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Claire. She didn't say much, just a short statement Diane had prepared. "I'm grateful for the truth, and I hope this sends a message that no one, no matter how powerful, is above accountability." But as the cameras flashed and the questions flew, Claire felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Angela. "Thank you," Angela said quietly, "for not giving up." Claire looked at her, and for the first time in months, she smiled. A real smile. "Thank you," Claire said, "for reminding me I wasn't alone." In the weeks that followed, Richard's company lost half its value. He was forced to step down as CEO. Several business deals collapsed. Vanessa left him, taking their son and filing for child support. And Richard, the man who once had everything, found himself facing lawsuits, investigations, and a future that looked nothing like the one he'd planned. Claire used part of her settlement to start a nonprofit organization that provided legal support to women going through high-conflict divorces. She called it Second Chapter. Within 6 months, it had helped over 200 women. Claire didn't do interviews. She didn't write a book. She didn't try to capitalize on her pain. She just moved forward, quietly, deliberately, building a life that was hers. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, Claire was sitting in a small coffee shop in Vermont, far from the mansion, far from the courtroom, far from the cameras. She had a new apartment, a new routine, a new sense of peace. Her phone buzzed, a message from Diane. Saw the news. Richard's company filed for bankruptcy. Thought you'd want to know. Claire read the message, then set her phone down. She didn't feel joy. She didn't feel revenge. She just felt free. Because in the end, the best thing Richard ever gave her wasn't the settlement. It was the moment he underestimated her and the strength she found when she decided to prove him wrong. So, let me ask you this. If you were in Claire's position, would you have fought back or would you have walked away quietly? And if you've ever felt underestimated, what did you do to prove them wrong? Drop your thoughts in the comments.